Right now, millions of people are perfectly positioned to buy their dream home or, sell their current property and walk away with a massive profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the weird thing is, they're completely paralyzed, like
Right.
completely stuck. And it's because they're being haunted by, well, the ghost of a market that hasn't actually existed since, what, 2022?
Right. It's a totally different landscape now.
Exactly.
Okay.
So today we're taking a deep dive into this really insightful excerpt we received. It's called Navigating the Crossroads of a Shifting Real Estate Market.
And it's such a great piece.
It really is. And, our mission today isn't just to read you some textbook table of contents about housing inventory or, like, interest rates.
No, nobody wants that.
Right? Nobody wants that. Think of this deep dive as a targeted psychological unblocking session. We're going to deconstruct the hidden mechanisms behind why the current market feels so incredibly paralyzing to really knowledgeable people.
Yeah, because it's not a lack of knowledge usually.
Exactly. And we want to extract the precise, actionable strategies this source offers to move you from, hesitation to actual execution.
Well, and what I love about the author of this piece is that they managed to completely bypass those typical, dry macroeconomic talking points.
Oh, for sure.
Instead, they drill straight into the behavioral psychology that's driving all this current gridlock. Because the text points out this crucial distinction. People aren't stuck because they've suddenly lost their underlying motivation.
Right. They still want to move. They
Yeah.
still want to upgrade or downsize or whatever.
Exactly. The paralysis is coming from the fact that the actual sort of underlying physics of the market have fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
And when the environment shifts that rapidly, just from an evolutionary perspective, the natural human instinct is to just freeze in place. You freeze and you assess the landscape for threats.
That makes so much sense. Let's visualize the mechanics of that freeze for a second. Trying to figure out your next real estate move right now. It feels a bit like standing at a crosswalk where the traffic signals have just been totally removed.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. And the speed limit has been entirely rewritten overnight. So you know exactly what your destination is on the other side of the street.
You can see it right there.
Yeah. And you remember how you used to cross, but stepping off the curb today just feels like this huge, uncalculated risk.
It feels incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. So to understand the root cause of this gridlock, we really have to look at the people currently holding the inventory, the sellers.
The sellers, yes.
Because the source spends a significant amount of time breaking down what it calls seller's paralysis. And it seems deeply rooted in cognitive bias.
It really is. What we're seeing right now is just a textbook example of the endowment effect, and it's playing out on this massive scale. The text highlights how homeowners are actively anchoring their expectations to those peak market anomalies we saw just a short time ago.
Yeah, those crazy stories.
Right. They're basing their property's value on those localized stories of, 50 bidding wars, waived inspections, homes appreciating by double-digit percentages in just a couple of months.
Okay, but hold on. Let's look at this objectively for a second. If I'm the listener, or, if I own a house, and my neighbor with the exact same floor plan sold for this massive premium just 24 months ago, why shouldn't I anchor to that price?
Well,
Like the bricks are exactly the same, the zip code is the same. Why should I have to absorb a perceived loss of equity simply because, I don't know, the calendar flipped and the macroeconomic climate cooled off a bit? It feels entirely rational to hold out, right?
Look, it completely feels rational. I
Yeah.
totally get that. But the source details exactly how it's mathematically and really strategically flawed.
Okay, how so?
Well, by anchoring to that 2022 data, sellers are relying on a velocity of money that simply doesn't exist in the current ecosystem anymore.
Right, the money's moving differently now.
Exactly. The text notes that, sure, well-priced homes are still transacting, but the buyer pool is functioning with entirely different leverage.
How leverage?
Yeah. Inventory levels have ticked up, which gives buyers optionality. And here's the rule. When buyers have optionality, the premium on any individual asset drops.
So basically relying on those outdated automated online estimates or holding out for what was essentially a historical anomaly, it just creates a completely false baseline.
Exactly. It creates this reality distortion field. You're holding out for a price that the current liquidity of the market physically cannot support.
Wow. So you're basically stuck in a fantasy.
Pretty much. The author emphasizes that true clarity requires this brutal detachment from past valuations. It really demands a mental pivot.
A pivot to what?
a pivot from, what my house was worth in a zero interest rate environment to what liquid capital I can actually extract from this asset today.
Right. Because if you anchor to a past market, you're essentially treating your home like a museum piece, not a tradable asset.
Yes, exactly. You're basically just waiting for a time machine to be invented.
Hmm.
And the text is very clear that wishful thinking is the primary driver of this specific brand of seller paralysis.
That's fascinating. And because sellers are gripped by this endowment effect, refusing to list or flat out refusing to negotiate, they're effectively starving the market of viable inventory.
Right, which causes a chain reaction.
Exactly. It creates a severe bottleneck downstream, directly hitting the people trying to purchase those homes. So, the buyers.
Yeah, the buyers are really feeling it.
The source material paints this pretty grim picture of buyer frustration.
Sure.
It describes a demographic that's essentially trapped in this high-stakes waiting game.
The frustration is just palpable in the text. I mean, buyers are confronting a landscape where their purchasing power has shifted dramatically, but they're still operating with this zero compromise mentality.
Right, they want everything to be perfect.
Exactly. They're sitting on the sidelines waiting for some massive influx of pristine inventory, or they're holding their breath for interest rates to miraculously just drop back to historical lows.
Which isn't happening.
No. And the source notes that many buyers are experiencing such severe decision fatigue that they're actively debating whether to just abandon their search entirely.
Reading this section of the text, it sounded identical to the psychology of scrolling through a streaming service on a Friday night.
Hmm.
But, applied to $1 million asset.
Oh, that is such a good comparison.
Right. Like you pass on a really solid, highly rated movie because you're convinced that if you just keep scrolling, a flawless, undiscovered masterpiece is just going to magically appear in your queue.
Yep.
And so buyers are walking through perfectly functional, solid homes and just passing on them, convinced that a flawless new listing will drop the absolute second they sign a contract.
The streaming analogy really captures the feeling perfectly. But let's look at the actual mechanism of what they're passing up, because the author introduces a critical philosophy here regarding market opportunities.
Okay, lay it on me.
The text argues that the perfect home in a shifting market is rarely the brand new listing that just hit the market on a Thursday.
Really?
Yeah. Often, the highest value opportunity is the property that has been sitting on the market for 30 to 45 days.
Now wait, see, to a lot of buyers, a metric like high days on market is a massive flashing red flag.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the immediate assumption is that the foundation must be cracked or the seller is hiding something catastrophic, right? Why is the source suggesting that a stale listing is actually a hidden gem?
Well, it all comes down to the mechanics of leverage. See, a newly listed home attracts buyers who are operating under a scarcity mindset. They're competing against the perceived interest of other buyers.
Which is obviously the seller's ideal scenario.
Exactly. But when a home sits for several weeks, that psychological leverage decays. The seller who, anchored to a 2022 price is suddenly forced to confront the reality of the current market.
Oh, I see.
And the text points out that these sellers become highly motivated to transact. So by targeting homes with higher days on market, a buyer shifts from a passive strategy like waiting for the macroeconomic environment to improve to a proactive strategy.
So they're proactively hunting for a discount.
Yes, they're capturing what the author calls the stale listing discount. They are essentially buying the seller's fatigue. And that fatigue allows for actual negotiation on price, terms, or concessions.
That's brilliant. You are literally leveraging their timeline against your optionality. Okay, so we've got sellers paralyzed by past expectations and buyers paralyzed by the illusion of a perfect future. That brings us to the ultimate friction point outlined in the text. The people who are attempting to do both of those things simultaneously.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
The homeowners who need to sell their current property to unlock the equity required to buy their next one.
The classic double bind. This contingent sits at the absolute center of the crossroads.
Right.
The text explicitly states that the most frequent question the author encounters from this group revolves around, arbitrary timing.
Like what?
The question is usually phrased as, should I just wait until the fall? Or, should I hold off until the spring market?
I want to push back on the author's framing of this for a second. Because if I am selling to buy, the math feels incredibly punitive right now.
It does feel that way.
Right. If I sell my house today and take a perceived hit on the equity because I have to negotiate, and then I turn around and finance my new purchase at a significantly higher interest rate than my current mortgage, Haven't I just lost money on both sides of the transaction?
I hear you.
It seems like basic financial preservation to just wait this whole thing out.
Well, you're describing the lock-in effect, which is definitely the dominant macroeconomic narrative right now. And the math you just outlined is technically correct if you're looking at the transaction in a complete vacuum.
Okay, but we aren't in a vacuum.
Exactly. The text dissects the danger of this timing fallacy. The author argues that delaying a move based entirely on macro-level interest rates ignores the concept of equity displacement.
Equity. Yes.
Displacement. Think
Right.
about it. If you're waiting for rates to drop, you are also waiting alongside millions of other buyers.
Right.
So when rates finally do drop, demand floods right back in, inventory tightens even further, and the purchase price of your next home artificially inflates.
Oh, wow.
And that price jump entirely wipes out the savings you would have gotten from the lower interest rate.
So by waiting for the perfect mathematical environment, you are actively inviting the very competition that will destroy your purchasing power.
Precisely. The text delivers a pretty stark reality check here. Decisions in real estate must be dictated by hyper-personal variables.
Like what kind of variables?
Your career timeline, your family growth, your specific geographic needs, not by what generalized news headlines suggest about the global economy.
Because generalized news headlines are, by definition, lagging indicators.
Yes, always.
I mean, the front page of the Wall Street Journal isn't telling you what is happening today. It's reporting on median closed sales data from transactions that were negotiated like 60 days ago.
That is the exact crux of the trap. If you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for a major publication to declare that it is definitively, a buyer's market, you're basically waiting for a consensus.
Right. And by the time there's a consensus,
By the time the data is robust enough to form a media consensus, institutional capital and proactive buyers have already absorbed all the actual opportunities. The crowd has already moved
if missed the boat.
completely. Letting generic, broad strokes advice dictate a highly personal, logistical, and financial move practically guarantees that you are always operating a step behind the actual market velocity.
That makes total sense. And this really brings us to the core utility of the source material.
Yeah, the real actionable stuff.
Right. If we strip away the historical anchoring, and if we abandon the hope for a miraculous drop in interest rates, and if we reject the idea of timing our lives around seasonal news cycles, how do we systematically dismantle this paralysis?
Well, the author provides a really specific four-pillar framework designed to act as the antidote to this uncertainty.
Okay, let's break those down.
Sure. So the author frames uncertainty not as a permanent psychological condition, but simply as a symptom of an asymmetric information gap.
An information gap.
Right.
Okay.
You feel paralyzed because you are operating with missing or outdated data. So the four pillars are designed to close that gap. First, you must establish the exact current localized value of your home, discarding all automated estimates.
No more checking those real estate apps every day.
Exactly. Second, you need a granular understanding of the actual available inventory in your target neighborhood, not the national housing averages.
Right. And then third, you have to map out your real financial options.
Yes.
And we aren't just talking about, comparing a 30-year fixed rate at two different banks. We're talking about understanding the actual mechanics of temporary rate buydowns or adjustable rate mortgages, or how bridging loans function in a tighter market.
Right, the creative financing options.
Exactly. And fourth, you have to model out how different timing scenarios impact your specific net worth.
The elegance of this whole framework is that it actively removes the need for macroeconomic prediction.
Yeah, you don't have to be a psychic.
Right. The text reminds the reader that you don't need a crystal ball to forecast the Federal Reserve's next move. You just need concrete, localized data to build a resilient strategy.
Yeah.
Gathering this clarity today allows you to make a calculated decision tomorrow, even if your actual timeline to move is 12 to 18 months out.
It's the difference between studying global climate change models versus just checking the local weather radar before a major hike.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. You can't control the macroeconomic weather. You can't force the Federal Reserve to change the climate.
Obviously not.
But what you can do is look at the specific microclimate of your exact route, pack the appropriate gear, and understand the terrain.
Yeah.
When you possess hyperlocal, accurate information, the anxiety basically just dissipates because you have a contingency for whatever the environment throws at you. You are no longer frozen at the trailhead.
That's exactly it. And the author's underlying thesis here is really one of empowerment through specialization. Well, the source explicitly offers the author's own localized market data and strategic experience to help individuals run these very specific scenarios.
Ah, right.
It highlights a fundamental truth about complex markets. Expert hyperlocal guidance serves as the bridge over that broken crosswalk we talked about earlier.
Yeah, you don't have to walk it alone.
Exactly. You don't have to synthesize global economic trends in a vacuum. You leverage a local specialist to translate those trends into a personal strategy.
Taking a step back to kind of synthesize this entire deep dive, the most critical takeaway from this source is that the real estate market is not broken.
Not at all.
It hasn't stopped. It has simply shifted its underlying physics. So whether you are a seller clinging to the ghost of 2022, or a buyer endlessly scrolling for a flawless asset, or even a homeowner caught in the double bind of trying to do both, the mechanism to break free is identical.
It's all the same solution.
Yeah, right. You have to aggressively tune out the broad lagging headlines.
Yeah.
You have to recognize when you're letting cognitive biases, like the endowment effect or loss aversion, dictate your strategy. And you have to hyper-focus on your own personalized data and your unique timeline.
It really is the ultimate localized solution to a feeling of global macroeconomic anxiety.
And frankly, the psychological architecture we've discussed today, it applies far beyond real estate.
Oh, 100%.
If you're listening to this right now and feeling paralyzed about any major life transition, maybe a career pivot, a cross-country relocation, a major financial pivot, the framework holds up.
It totally does.
General advice creates general anxiety.
Yeah.
Information that is meticulously tailored to your specific individual reality is the undisputed cure for hesitation.
You know, building on that concept of information latency, if we take the source's premise to its logical conclusion, it actually presents a really fascinating question for the future.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, the entire paralysis we've discussed today is rooted in human latency. We wait for lagging headlines. We wait for a consensus. We wait for the changing of the seasons.
Right.
But as artificial intelligence and predictive modeling begin to accurately forecast hyperlocal neighborhood pricing trends and days-on-market metrics long before they ever become a headline,
Wow, yeah.
will this wait-and-see human paralysis eventually be engineered out of the market entirely? I mean, when the data can definitively, mathematically prove that waiting for a consensus actively costs you capital, will human hesitation simply become obsolete?
Will human hesitation become obsolete?
Mm-hmm.
That is a phenomenal concept to carry with you, because when algorithms can prove the literal cost of your procrastination, the waiting game fundamentally changes.
It really does.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you are currently standing at that broken crosswalk, evaluating your next move, we hope this exploration provided the exact clarity you need to look past the noise, check your own hyperlocal map, and take that first calculated step forward today.